We discussed about secretin family. So secretin, amazing hormone, also called as antacid. Now, if you're calling something antacid, it means it's gonna neutralize the acid which is formed in our body, right? So this is the first hormone that was discovered by Bayliss and Starling. That's like superstars of physiology. So what happened here is that the acid-rich chyme, which when it reaches duodenum, right, which when it reaches duodenum, it stimulates these S cells, and these S cells, they secrete secretin, right, and this secretin later goes to this HCl, right, and it neutralizes the acid. That's the function of secretin. The number one function of secretin is to only produce neutralizing effects on the acid. The reactions is that it releases HCO3, that is bicarb rich, and pancreatic juice together for acid neutralization. Augments mean it increases the action of CCK, because CCK and S cells and CCK, they both work together. Decreases the gastric acid secretion via negative inhibition, and it increases the contraction of pyloric sphincter, right? Now, this pyloric sphincter, now if we contract the pyloric sphincter, this sphincter closes. Once the sphincter closes, it will stop the food from going in, from moving into the intestine. So this is like a concept, okay? Another big concept here is that a really nice concept here is that gastric hormones mean the hormones that are produced in the stomach, around the stomach, they push the forward in the intestine, while the intestinal hormones, they slow things down. Now, why does it happen? It happens because one compartment works while other one, especially the next one, prepares. It's a coordinated traffic control. Second point is that gastric hormones are released when food is in the stomach already, or when it's time to move the food forward. This is when the gastric hormones are released. Whereas the intestinal hormones, they wait they wait if the whole food is become too acidic or too fatty, and then this intestine, it senses this acidic chyme is acidic, basic fatty chyme, and it realizes, okay, we need to deal with this food now. So that's how the inhibition of pyloric sphincter works. That's why, because gastric hormones are like, okay, stop, don't send more food back, I am tired of digesting this food, just give us some time. Another thing that is present here is that a negative feedback loop, it avoids the chaos in the system. That's how it works. That's how the contraction of pyloric sphincter, it prevents the food from moving back into the intestine. Okay, so that was gastrin. That's really fast, right? So gastrin, they produce by S cells, right? And the S cells are present on the brush borders of the intestine, of the duodenum especially. So that is secretin for you. Another thing, we have this amazing hormone called gastric inhibitory polypeptide. Now I'm going to break this word. Gastric means gastric, inhibition means stopping, and polypeptide means it is a hormone that is made up of multiple protein chains. So it cannot cross the blood-brain, it cannot cross the bilipid layer of a cell. So we need a second messenger here. So this is it. Let's talk. Now this gastric inhibitory peptide, GIP, is also known as glucose dependent insulinotropic peptide. Now it depends upon glucose. This hormone, this GIP, depends upon glucose. How? So what happened here is that oral intake of glucose has happened, right? You have eaten something. Once you have eaten that glucose, it goes to the K cells. Now that K cells releases this GIP. Now this GIP goes to the beta cells of pancreas, and then this beta cells of pancreas releases insulin. So this GI hormones that increases the insulin secretions are called incretins. For example, GIP, that is gastric inhibitory polypeptide, or known as glucose dependent because it dependent upon glucose. Insulinotropic means it increases insulin. Polypeptide is polypeptide. So incretins, this incretin is an umbrella term that is used for these hormones. So GIP and glucagon-like peptide, GLP, also works like that. Here I've written something. I've written here that GIP is a duodenal plus jejunal hormone, okay? it is present in both of in both places. Okay, if glucose reaches duodenum, if glucose reaches jejunum, this GIP is released, right? Because K cells, right, enteroendocrine, are present in both of these places, in duodenum, in jejunum, at the mucosa. Okay, so that's why this hormone is secreted in duodenum and in jejunum, because K enteroendocrine, right? So first part of the small intestine sense from stomach, right? It senses if any glucose has appeared in the stomach. Once the first part of the intestine, that is the duodenum, it senses, okay, some sort of, oh, this guy has eaten some sort of glucose, it releases this GIP. So glucose, fatty acids, and amino acid, it releases this, this GIP. So what happened afterwards? So glucose, it goes to SGLT1, receptors, and then these SGLT1 receptors, they bind with K cells, they activate K cells, and then this K cells produces exocytosis of GIP hormone, and then this GIP hormone binds with GS, that is G stimulatory, GPCR, that is glycoprotein receptor, coupled protein receptor, GPCR, okay? And this stimulatory protein, then, it's stimulatory, it means it increases CAMP levels, okay? So increases CAMP levels, and then this PKA, that is protein kinase A, and EPAC2, that is exchange protein directly activated by CAMP, okay? EPAC, what is exchange protein? EP means exchange, P is protein. It's a part of CAMP, okay, cyclic AMP signals pathway, and it's a downstream pathway of GS coupled protein receptors, okay? So here what happens is that these exchange proteins directly activated by proteins, right? So what does this do? What does this EPAC do? This EPAC is a guanine nucleotide exchanger, GEF, okay? And it just mainly works via RAP1 and RAP2. I don't know why I'm going into this RAP1, RAP2. It's just I'm trying to explain you this, that GDP turns into GTP, okay? So, okay, just forget about it. This happens, it's just the pathway. So via these two things, insulin is released, from the beta cells, and GIP alone can't release insulin unless insulin is present, okay? Because I thought about it that, it means this GIP called gastric inhibitory peptide must be insulinotropic. It must cause some sort of diabetic. It is diabetogenic or something like that. But it turns out that this hormone cannot work alone. It needs insulin. It only increases the amount of insulin. It only amplifies the amount of increased insulin. It is not a diabetogenic hormone. So that's the big foundational concept here. Okay, let's talk about vasoactive intestinal peptide, VIP. It's a VIP. It's very important. Why? Because it relaxes the smooth muscles, right? If the smooth muscles are relaxed, it will increase the fluid flow, it will decrease the acid flow, and it will increase the saliva flow via acetylcholine, right? Let's talk. Okay, so these VIP, they are made from enteric neuron, right? And these enteric neurons are present in the parasympathetic pancreatic islets, okay? And the actions are very simple. Again, I've told you already, the VIP only arrives when your body is under parasympathetic drive, because when you're relaxed, when you're like enjoying life, then VIP will be released. When the parasympathetic is on the drive, you will produce less acid, you will produce more saliva, because you're released, because you're relaxed via the acetylcholine vagus promotion, and in intestine you will have more fluid secretion, more electrolyte secretion. So how it works? Let's talk this, because this is an important thing. VIP works on intestine. On saliva you already understand how they works, how the parasympathetic works on saliva. On stomach you understand that sympathetic increases, parasympathetic, you understand this, and you understand this. The important part is here, intestine. So here is the thing. There's this hormone called VIP, right? This is vasoactive. It means it does something to the vessel. It it actually like relaxes the smooth muscle. It means some sort of dilation is gonna happen. So it just dilates the vessels, right? In short. So let's go into a little detail. So VIP acts on VPAC1 and VPAC2. These two receptors are present. They both are GS, means G stimulatory, and it stimulates, it means it increases the adenylyl cyclase. Once adenylyl cyclase increases the camp increases protein kinase A. Now protein kinase A, it will work in two ways. First, that via the crypts of Leberkan is this small intestine crypts, right? It will increase the CFTR. That CFTR is this, these are just these cystic fibrosis transmembrane conductance regulator. Now I don't know why I remember this whole term, but I just usually remember the first two terms of this cystic fibrosis receptors, not receptors, channels. They are basically chloride channels, okay, and they are found mainly in these epithelial cells of apical membrane, okay. So what happens when we increase this CFTR? So these CFTR, they they just shuts off, or maybe they trash, or they remove a lot of chloride, right? So chloride flow increases out in the lumen of the intestine, right? Because they are present on the apical side of the intestine, and they produce a lot of chloride. Now once chloride is present inside the lumen, now this chloride can be exchanged with sodium, and then sodium follows passively, right? And then the water follows with this chloride, right? So once the chloride is outside, this sodium will follow chloride, and then water follows sodium, and then you have diarrhea. Water follows, and then you have this diarrhea, this watery diarrhea. That's the pathogenesis of watery diarrhea. Other thing that this protein kinase A can do is actually it will stop the myosin light chain kinase. Now this MLCK is an enzyme that acts on actin-myosin interaction. Once this MLCK is inhibited, actin-myosin interaction will not happen, the contraction will not happen. On the contrary, relaxation happens. So that's how the relaxing of smooth muscles happen, because it inhibits MLCK complex, MLCK enzyme, okay. So in short, that is WDHA syndrome. Watery diarrhea, watery stool, it doesn't improve by fasting, because your CFTR channel are upregulated. You will lose a lot of chloride. Once chloride is lost, sodium will follow the chloride because of the osmolarity, and then water will also follow because of the hyperosmolar state, right? Because this will create a hyperosmolar state, because water wanna make sure that you have a state of equilibrium. So water follows this, and then you have this watery stool, and this does not improve by fasting. It's one of the great points about this whole condition. So not much pain, because again the chloride channels are messed up. There's nothing really going bad. It's just you have a watery stool. Not pain. That's why. Not pain unless metastasis of any sort of thing happens. Hypokalemia, I will tell you how it happens. Hypokalemia happens because due to stool loss. Okay, I will tell you how. If we lose a lot of stool, we lose a lot of water. If we lose a lot of water, that will lead to volume loss, and that will stimulate aldosterone. Once aldosterone is activated, we know aldosterone has four functions, 1 2 3 4, and one of the function is to remove a lot of this K plus from the body, because aldosterone thinks you are going in a hyperkalemic crisis, but actually you're just going through a bad state of these CFTR channels. So you have these bad CFTR channels, and then you lose a lot of potassium, and then you get hypokalemia because of aldosterone, and then renal potassium wasting happens, and then again you have less hypokalemia. It means this PQRST, this QRST complex, from Q to T, this ECG, right? This QRST complex will elongate because you have less K, because then you will in the phase 3. Okay, so I'm going a little bit into the cardiology. Okay, so we have SA node, and then we have AV node. In SA node we have these phases, right? We have these phase 4, phase 0, and phase 3, right? These are, I'm talking about SA node right now. So phase 4 is that when we have this sodium inside, calcium inside, and then we lose some potassium outside the cells, so that the electronegativity of the cell becomes a little bit positive. From -60 it goes to -40. Okay, so once it reaches -40, we need to have this phase 0. For phase 0, this is phase 0 this time. This straight upstroke is phase 0. In phase 0 we have these long lasting calcium channels, right? And these are open. A lot of calcium, they come inside, they arrive inside, a lot of influx happens. So the resting membrane potential moves from -40 to the depolar state. Okay, once it depolarized, it produces this impulse. The SA node produces this impulse, and then again repolarization happens via via this this efflux of potassium. So a lot of efflux of potassium is needed to repolar the SA node. So by repolar I mean the depolarized SA node goes back to negatively charged SA node. So for that to happen, we need a lot of potassium. And if we have less potassium, then this repolarization of SA node will be prolongated. So once we have prolongated nodal repolarization, we will have elongated this QT complex, okay, on ECG. So that's important right there. Another thing that can happen is that achloria. It means less or no HCl. How? Because this because this whole this VIP, it stops parietal cells, and it stops the G cells. It inhibits. Now let me go a little bit deep inside. Again, I told you it's VIP is a vasoactive intestinal peptide, right there. Now it's a neuropeptide. I didn't tell you. It's a neuropeptide because it's made from enteric neurons that are present in the parasympathetic chain, right? And they are coupled with these G stimulatory, okay, GS. Always remember that, GS, right? Now it inhibits these gastric, parietal, and G cells. How? It inhibits it's okay. So it's inhibiting parietal and G cells indirectly, because VIP acts on this CAMP, right, mediating mechanism in gastric mucosa and reduces acid secretion. It actually stops the histamine release from ECL cells. Now, once you lower the histamine, it directly reduces gastrin release, because histamine increases gastrin. If from previous video, if you have seen it or not, usually histamine increases acid. Okay, so if you stop the histamine, acid will be less. So the result is less stimulation of these potassium, this H plus K plus pumps, and then you will have less HCl release. On the G cells, what will happen? So G cells, let's talk about G cells. On the antrum of stomach, we have these G cells, okay? Now these G cells, they release gastrin, okay? So these G cells, they are normally stimulated by parietal cells. That's also true. So VIP inhibit G cell activity, by just, it just happened directly. It just stops it. VIP inhibits G cells activity. Less gastrin, less acid. So this happens both directly through VIP receptors on G cells and indirectly via stimulation of somatostatin released from the D cells, which strongly inhibit this G cells. So we can say that this VIP can actually increase somatostatin, right? It can, okay? So that's very important as well. So VIP, it also stimulates, by the way, these bicar, for basic the intestinal and pancreatic fluids, and this relaxation of the smooth muscles. It happens via this MLCK enzyme, okay? So this is the story of VIP. Let's talk about VIPoma. VIPoma, wow, amazing name. Seen in its islets of pancreas, right? It's a neuroendocrine tumor. Increased secretion of pancreas. Increased secretion of VIP. Again, if we have a lot of VIP, what will happen? Increase chloride, increase sodium, increase water, more diarrhea, more water diarrhea. It will stop MLCK, no contraction, more relaxation of smooth muscles. So what will happen? we will lead to something called a WDHA syndrome, aka pancreatic cholera Werner Morrison syndrome. Wow, I hate learning the names, but they ask about names only. It would have been such better if they just asked about, okay, VI Poma, but they ask about Morrison syndrome. Now I don't remember Morrison syndrome, but I do remember VI Poma because I remember how VIP works. So we have diarrhea due to this secretion of electrolyte. This CFTR channels are upregulated. That's why. Hypokalemia because of aldosterone, because we are losing a lot of volume in these watery diarrhea. And then we have aclohydria because we are fundamentally releasing VIP, and then VIP is going and it increases the somatostatin, and it's just stopping these big HCl hormones, right? So that was VI Poma and GIP and and secretin. So that was secretin family right there. Let's talk about other hormones. Motilin, amazing hormone. Let's talk about motilin. Motilin is seen in all fasting individuals, causes increased gastric motility, regulates something called as migratory motor complex. Now this MMC from stomach, and this MMC is actually like a cleaning lady. It cleans any sort of debris that is present in your intestinal tract. So we'll talk about it later because this is another big topic. Not so big, honestly. No topic is big enough, I think, in this life. Then we have this something called as erythromycin. Now this is drug, and this is agonist, means it promotes motilin receptor. It binds to motilin receptors, and it used to treat gastric paresis in diabetic patients. Usually what you will see that you will meet a lot of gastric patients. For example, I saw one babushka here in where I live, and here I saw that a lot of diabetic women, especially in the age of maybe 85, they have this gastric paresis because they are diabetic as hell, and they are alcoholic as well. So what will happen here is that there's increased glucose because they are diabetic. They have hyperglycemic state all the time. This increased glucose will promote autonomic neuropathy and enteric neuropathy, okay, and then loss of motility will happen. That's how it happens, okay, and that's how you will see gastric paresis. What is gastric paresis? Gastric paresis is that when your peristalsis movement almost stops, comes to an halt, okay, it stops, it's not moving because you have these enteric neuropathy and this autonomic neuropathy, right? Both of them are autonomic in nature, right? Because our autonomous nervous system has three parts: sympathetic, parasympathetic, and enteric. Most people, they forget about the enteric autonomic nervous pathway, but it exists. So enteric neuropathy happens, and then this peristalsis movement is not going to happen, and then it's going to lead to a lot of problems, right? It's going to lead to a lot of diarrhea, a lot of shit in home, okay? Once you open their home, you will see shit everywhere. You will see shit in the bed, you will see shit on the couch, on their living room, and everywhere. And that's one of the key sign of diabetic in old ladies, in old men as well. So that's gastroparesis for you right there. Okay, let's talk about guanine. Okay, it's really simple hormone, guanilin. Okay, so this guanilin is a paracrine hormone. It means it's neither endocrine nor exocrine, right? And it's a paracrine hormone. It's made by intestinal epithelial cells, and it is present in the intestine and in the colon, okay? And it binds to something called as guanylate cyclase C. Amazing name. Now the weird thing about these receptors are these weird naming. I mean, it's not so weird if you really think about them deeply. So again, it increases this cyclic GMP. Again, CFTR will increase. A lot of chloride is gonna increase. Now chloride increases. That's how the chloride increases, because it binds with this guanylate cyclic C. The main job of this guanylin is to regulate NaCl and water secretion in the intestine, because intestine needs to be watery. If it's dry, the food itself is going to destroy the intestine. It acts by activating these guanylate cyclase C, right, GCC receptors on the surface of intestinal epithelial cells. Again, they increase CGMP, and then it just upregulates CFTR, and then the chloride carries the sodium, and then sodium carries the water, and then you have this NaCl watery intestine. Cool thing, right? Another cool thing, very amazing. So why chloride is really needed? So chloride is usually released by CFTR, and Na water follows and moist fluid. Chloride, when it binds to water, it becomes antibacterial, and it cleans the gut. Amazing. And chloride needs to balance Na. That's why that's why it happens. That's why sodium follows chloride, because of the ionic, neutrality needs to happen. Structurally, E. coli toxin is really similar to guanylin. So usually what happens is that E. coli will come and it will bind to this guanylate cyclic C. Once E. coli binds to this guanylate cyclic C, GCC, it will upregulate the CFTR channel, and then you will have a lot of chloride, right? So this is called molecular mimicry. It can mimic what? It can mimic guanylin, whatever you want to call it. So this molecular mimicry is happening, and then it permanently activates these GCC pathways, GS pathways, and then you have watery stool diarrhea, right? That's how E. coli affects you. That's why when you have E. coli infection in the intestine, you have watery diarrhea, because E. coli acts through guanylin. That's amazing. Imagine you have some this organism, this creature that can mimic a hormone, and it's so amazing how nature has done it. It's just amazing. It is amazing. Let's talk about peptide YY. Amazing name, YY. Wow. Now these peptide YY, they are the brake of ileum, right? They stop it. They are like, stop. We need to digest the food, because if we don't digest the food, you're gonna have a big poop inside your ileum, and it's gonna be stuck there. We need to digest first, and then start regulating. We need to like synchronize. So that's what's gonna happen. Peptide YY. Cool name, by the way. So what happened? This peptide YY, it acts on these Y receptors, same as neuropeptide Y. Amazing. That's why they name peptide YY. So they act on these Y receptors, and it is a G inhibitory. Now again, if it's G inhibitory, it's gonna reduce the CAMP. Now this CAMP goes down. Once the CAMP goes down, you have this ileum function which is going down. It stops the ileum. Okay, that's one way to stop the ileum. Cool. What about other thing? Other thing is that when you have this digestion of fat, right, it slows down other things, right? Because your intestinal hormones are like, okay, stop, don't send more food. We have to digest this food first and then get ready for another batch of food, so it slows down this gastric movement of food. So digestion of food slows the other things, right? So other thing, what happens there? So this peptide YY, it works via negative feedback signal, right? And it says that, hey stomach, stop sending food, we're still processing the food in the ileum, right? So it stops the ileum, stops the movement of the food. And this is why the peptide YY decreases gastric motility, and it decreases gastric secretion or acid secretion, right? Because peptide YY is like, okay, we have to, we have to stop it. Stop. That's the function of peptide YY. And another thing is that peptide YY is made by L cells in ileum. Of course, if it's gonna stop the ileum, it must be made in ileum. Come on. So that's another concept for you. Let's talk about ghrelin, one of my favorite hormone to talk about. It is amazing how it works. Let's talk about, so ghrelin, what happens? Ghrelin says, eat please. Ghrelin says, eat. You're hungry, you need to eat. Ghrelin is released when you're hungry. So, it's like synonymous terms. Hunger and ghrelin, both are synonymous. If we don't eat anything, we go into fasting. Fasting increases ghrelin, and then you are like, oh, I need to eat. My blood sugar is going down. Your ghrelin is up. So ghrelin says, eat please. So concept of ghrelin, and a concept of this something called as this growth releasing proteins. Okay, I'm gonna talk about them. So now these ghrelin is produced by auxentin glands, right? And they are present in the stomach, right? Auxentin gland, gastric gland produces something called as parietal, right? Chief cells, ECL, ghrelin produced cells, right? So auxentin glands are they're present in the gastric gland, right? I don't know why I'm so tired. So let's focus on the ghrelin. right? This is the last hormone of our intestine, not our intestine, mostly our GIT, right? So ghrelin, fundic part of the gastric gland. Oxyntic gland is present in the fundic part. Okay. Here, what I'm trying to say is that uh, oxyntic gland is also called a fundic gland, or it is called a gastric gland of the body of the fundus because it is found in the fundus and in the body, right? Body is the corpus of the stomach, okay? And these are just different name. Body is just this part, it's just thick stomach part, okay? So yes, they are present in the fundic region, and because of this that's where the acid secretion and the digestive enzyme is produced most. So they are present on the prime location, okay? Okay, so this oxyntic glands, right? Fundic glands, right? Oxyntic glands means fundic glands, okay? And these are just fundic glands is an umbrella term for these parietal, chief, mucosal, that surface, right? ECL, that is the enterochromaffin-like cells. They produce histamine, if you remember that, and D cells, right? These are like somatostatin producing cells, right? Another question that rises that why the oxyntic glands, these glands that produce this, ghrelin, hungry hormone, they are present in the fundic region because it's so simple. Because this region is responsible for the digestion of all the proteins. We need HCl for the activation of pepsin into pepsinogen. So we need ghrelin as well there, right? And HCl secretion requires these parietal cells, right? So, I mean, parietal cells need to be in this fundus of the body. And antrum, the lower part of the lower part of the stomach, right? It has these G cell, that is gastrin. And we have these mucosal, these surface cells, right? So functionally, fundic glands, that's the oxyntic glands, are the main site of digestion, right? The digestion that happens in the stomach. And antral glands, right, the pyloric glands, right, the lower part of the stomach, this is the main site of hormonal control like gastrin and somatostatin. I hope we understand this. I hope I am able to make this amazing concept because I am able to understand it. What I'm trying to say here is that we have this stomach, right? This is the lower esophageal sphincter. This is my stomach, okay? Okay, what happened here is that I'm gonna say this part, okay, right here. This is the fundic region around like the lower part of the stomach, and this is the body part, right? Right, okay. So this part is responsible for the digestion of food, okay? And this part is responsible for the hormonal secretion. Now, when I talk hormone, you must think about the hormone that needed for movement or stopping the inhibition. So D cells, oxyntic cells, they're present here on the gastric on here, and these cells that are present for the digestion of things, for example, such as fat and lipases and these pepsinogen, also present here on the body part of the stomach. Okay, maybe it was unnecessary all along to think about this, but okay, thinking is what we do. So fundic gastric region produces ghrelin, right? Now ghrelin acts via two ways. First way, it acts on these orexigenic neuron. Now when I think about orexigenic, I think about Oreo. Oreo makes me want to eat. So orexigenic in hypothalamus makes you eat, right? And paradoxically, it's not really a paradox. I just wrote it for so that it looks amazing. Wow, paradoxical. I'm so scientific. So paradoxically, it's not really a paradox. The name growth hormone is misleading. How? Because before reading about growth hormone, let's just think about ghrelin. Ghrelin goes to orexigenic neurons and then it makes you eat, right? Okay, let's talk what's written here. aka hunger hormone. Ghrelin is a hunger hormone, of course. Secretion is done via oxyntic glands of the stomach, of course. Level peak during fasting, because fasting you want to eat something. Okay, levels are high in anorexia nervosa patients. Here the ghrelin is high, but CNS resists eating because CNS is like, oh, you have high ghrelin, but you're not gonna eat because you have these anorexic, you're anorexic. So the general term here is that anorexia, right? What is anorexia? Anorexia literally means loss of appetite, loss of hunger. Okay, it occurs in these medical conditions where you have some sort of infection. When you have fever, you don't want to eat. That's how it happens. Depression, when you feel like you want to kill yourself, of course you don't want to eat because you're like thinking, okay, I want to end my life. Eat something and then think about it. Okay, so patient has anorexia due to maybe some liver disease, right? Means loss of appetite. It's not a psychiatric disorder. It's a hormonal disorder. So anorexia nervosa, this is a psychiatric disorder, right? This is a psychiatric disorder, right? You will have high ghrelin. You will want to eat, but you're not gonna eat because you have a fear of gaining weight. You think you're gonna look bad. You think your body is very bad looking, and you think you guys are fat. Maybe you are, but think it's a shitty disease. Don't have it. It's like voluntary. You don't eat to cause severe weight loss, and this amenorrhea, right, and bradycardia and hypertension, and these things are gonna happen. So don't do this. Eat well. So it's high in these patients because they are hungry all the time. They just don't eat because they're afraid to gain weight, pussies. And other thing is that ghrelin is low in these obese patients because all they do is eat. So ghrelin release is less. Action is so oxygeneric, again, makes you eat more, makes you hungry. Increases gastric acid. Of course, if you eat something, it will increase the gastric motility. Of course, they go hand in hand. Adipogenesis, because when you eat something, the adipogenesis fat layer is gonna make. Of course, it's like common sense. It's something wow, like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. Adipogenesis is happening. No, adipogenesis happen because insulin is high. When you eat something, insulin is high, and it leads to adipogenesis. Increase the releases of growth hormone. Now, this is what I'm talking about. The amazing thing. So it increases the release of growth hormone. Now, ghrelin. This is why they named ghrelin. Growth hormone releasing, peptide. Growth hormone releasing protein. Growth hormone releasing. That's why it was named ghrelin, actually, because first they saw that ghrelin actually leads to increase GH hormone. Okay, so that's why they were named as ghrelin, because it's a growth releasing protein. Amazing naming scheme. Sometimes I wonder, like, it's so amazing how they named it. Let's talk about the name. The name is growth hormone. If you tell this to someone, everyone think, oh, it leads you to grow more. Well. It's not so simple. Don't try to oversimplify things. Two personalities. Growth hormone has two personality, depending on the energy state. If you're fed, if you're fasting. If you're fed, if you have already eaten, you will have more insulin, you will have more growth. That is done by growth hormone. Great thing, great for you. Bodybuilding, right? Amazing. Cool thing is that when you're fasting, when you have not eaten anything, you have less insulin. And then you have the lysis of fat, opposite of adipogenesis. Wow, so interesting, right? So less insulin leads to lysis of fat. You're gonna get shredded. So glucose sparing is done, right? And this glucose sparing is done by growth hormone. Okay, it maintains your blood sugar because you don't want to go inside any hypoglycemic coma, right? You don't want to go inside this. So growth hormone maintains your blood sugar on a good, stable level. Okay, so growth hormone maintains the blood sugar. Ghrelin releases growth hormone, maintains metabolic balance. Growth hormone does not make you grow but survive. That's the naming scheme. I just spent so much time thinking about it, honestly, because I thought about it, because how can it releases this GH? It must have some sort of, ghrelin must have some sort of connection with growth hormone. And then I went inside this spiral of thinking how the hell that growth hormone, it's amazing. That's how I'm trying to say. I'm just so passionate about it. I mean, I think I am. So that was ghrelin. That was peptide YY. That was guanylin. That was motilin. That was VI-POMA, VIP via CFTR channels, vasoactive. VIP channels, VIP proteins, very important. Relaxes smooth muscles. Gastric, GIP, again, glucose dependent, insulinotropic peptide. It means they depend upon the glucose. That's why they are not diabetogenic, because they depend upon. If you don't eat a lot of glucose, you're not going to get diabetes. So try to eat less glucose. Secretin family, concept of gastric hormone versus intestinal hormones. We know about cholecystokinase, PZ, pancreazymin, again, So these hormones, we know about LES, we know. Okay, so that was gastric hormones for you guys, and just enjoy this. Try to research more on these peptide YY. If you have any sort of question, try to find the answers of these questions, because it's gonna satisfy your hunger of knowing, because it's gonna satisfy your curiosity. And I love reading about these things, how this happened, even though the book is like, oh, just read about this. Hunger ghrelin is called hunger hormone. No, I want to know why it's called hunger hormone, or maybe why it only works on oxyntic gland, not on some, I don't know, not on some liver. So think about it. Okay, have a nice day.